But dharma literally comes from the Sanskrit root dri, which means that which holds, or that which sustains, or the intrinsic or essential quality of something from which it cannot be separated. And so each one of us have something which sustains us, something which is essential to our being, and some unique contribution that we're meant to offer to the world.
Tonight we are honored to have with us a very special guest, His Holiness Swayam Bhagavan Keshava Swami, known affectionately as SB Keshava Swami. Swamiji is a spiritual author, community mentor, dynamic teacher, and worldwide traveler. In 2002, after graduating from University College London with a BSc in Information Management, he adopted full-time monastic life to expand his knowledge, to deepen his spirituality, and to share these timeless principles with the wider society. For more than 20 years, Keshava Swami was a resident monk at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, one of the most important centers of Hindu life in the United Kingdom, and the UK headquarters of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, popularly known as ISKCON. As a respected and admired young Hindu leader in the UK, Keshava Swami has had the honor of hosting or engaging with religious and secular leaders, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, prime ministers such as David Cameron and Rishi Sunak, and Her Majesty the late Queen Elizabeth II. While based at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, he pioneered an innovative learning initiative called the School of Bhakti, and you can learn more at schoolofbhakti.com. And also led the temple's monastic training program, as well as driving forward national outreach initiatives. In 2022, he accepted vows of lifelong renunciation and a commitment to teaching and serving as a monk, and was formally awarded sannyas, the highest monastic order in Hindu traditions. Keshava Swami has designed numerous courses on Hindu theology, lifestyle management, and spiritual self-development, and has authored 10 books which bring the ancient wisdom into the modern context. He is especially known both for his deep study of sacred texts, such as the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavad Purana, and his ability to articulate the universal and timeless wisdom of these texts for all people. And I'm sure that's exactly what he will do with us tonight. Now, we're going to do something a little unusual in that we're changing up the format a little bit. So in discussing this evening's program with Swamiji, we both felt that we really wanted the tone to be more conversational than sometimes a lecture allows. And so you're all invited to be part of this conversation. But sometimes, if you're like me, you feel a little intimidated to just jump into a conversation. And you feel a little bit more intimidated to jump into a conversation with a Swami. And you feel a lot intimidated to jump into a conversation with a Swami who's over 7 feet tall.
And who's also holding a stick.
So with that in mind, we thought, how do we have a conversation without putting anyone on the spot? And our dear friend, who is going to introduce himself a little bit and give a little bit of his background, but we will call him Hari. Our dear friend Hari decided to step up and offer his services. And so...
Hold your applause.
I love how hold your applause is actually code for please applaud. So Hari has agreed that rather than putting a Princeton student on the spot, Hari has agreed for one night and one night only, I'm told by the admissions office, to embody the role of a Princeton student. So by the power vested in me, I hereby appoint you an honorary member of the class of 2026.
I got my own stick.
So we're going to invite Hari to kick off our conversation, embodying the role of perhaps a typical or prototypical student. And maybe this will spark some of our own questions, some of our own thoughts, reflections, and will perhaps melt the ice, so to speak. So we'll ask Swami and Hari to engage in some conversation. And at the conclusion of that, we will open up for some question and answer. Now, if anyone is feeling like you want to ask a question, but maybe you're a little shy or you want to keep the question anonymous, we also have some note cards and pens, and we can send those around. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll just kind of send those around to everyone. And just if in the course of the conversation, it sparks a question or a thought for you that you'd like addressed, we want to invite you to just jot down that question or that comment, and then you can just sort of get that card to me, and we'll get your question to the Swami. But now, without further ado, let's kick off the conversation. But before we do that, will you please join me in giving, well, we've already given the honorary member of the class of 2026 a round of applause, but would you please join me in giving our very, very special guest speaker, His Holiness S.B. Keshava Swami, a warm Princeton University welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Definitely after this program, I'm going to put on my LinkedIn profile, speaker at Princeton University. So my name is Hari. I also had a biography, but it was conveniently left out for humility's sake. So I grew up in, a little background about me, I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and I went to the Ohio State University, which is about, if you don't know about that, it's like about the same ranking as Princeton almost. So when I was growing up, I grew up here in America. My parents are from India. And I found myself in a very tricky situation when I was younger. I didn't really know I don't know what Hinduism was. I had to I'm still leading to this day, a sort of dual identity of my parents are Indians who grew up in India, who migrated to America, but I have to somehow live both cultures. And I really don't understand what this is all about. And I'm a very confused college student, and I want to get deeper into my faith, but I don't know exactly how to do it. And I was asked today it's a good opportunity because I can ask my deepest, darkest questions to Swami here, and I consider myself very fortunate. So I was thinking we could start with just in any good debate or conversation, let's define our terms. So Swami, I'm trying to understand what is Hindu. The topic tonight is demystifying Dharma. What exactly is Hinduism? And what does Dharma come into it? And are you a Hindu? And what is Dharma? Could you define these things for us?
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Just before I begin, my deep gratitude to Vineet, the program here at Princeton, for inviting me. And thank you, Hari, for your questions. I feel your struggle. I also grew up in London. My parents are from India. And I also grew up in a Hindu family with Hindu values. But I think it was about 15 or 16 years old when I had the same questions as you. And this is perhaps a very good place to start. Where does the word Hindu actually come from? How is it that we come to identify ourselves as Hindus? Do we identify ourselves as Hindus? In Sanskrit, there are two beautiful words, vyavaharik and paramarthik. Vyavaharik means conventional, practical usage. And then Paramarthik means absolute or essential understanding. And so for practical and conventional usage, we often refer to ourselves as Hindus. Of course, if you look at the tradition of India and the actual scriptures from which Hindus derive all their knowledge and understanding, you won't actually find the word Hindu there. I won't go into the whole history of the term. I'm sure many of you are familiar. But it was a term which was actually coined by those outside of the Vedic culture to refer to those who were followers of the Vedas or the ancient teachings found in India. And so Hinduism is a terminology which evolved as a cultural term, which was later adopted by the British and which later on just stuck in the Indian subcontinent. And now people come to refer to themselves as Hindus. So in conventional usage, yes, I'm a Hindu. But then in essential understanding, in a higher understanding, the actual terminology we use is Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan Dharma literally means one's eternal duty, one's eternal purpose, one's eternal essential being. And you also asked about the word dharma. So dharma is a very, very beautiful word and sometimes a word which is difficult to translate because it's so multidimensional. But dharma literally comes from the Sanskrit root dri, which means that which holds or that which sustains or the intrinsic or essential quality of something from which it cannot be separated. And so each one of us have something which sustains us, something which is essential to our being, and some unique contribution that we're meant to offer to the world. And so the scriptures explore various types of dharma that each one of us have, which really define and awaken our potential in this world.
Wow, thank you so much for that. I think even before we talk about our definitions, I'd like to know what I'm kind of looking at here. So, if I don't know how to word this properly in a more what exactly are you, and what's with the stick? Are you? I know you're a Princeton fan because you're wearing orange. You know. I mean, yeah. What's with the stick? Is it like for? I'm trying to understand what exactly are you.
Thank you so much. Yes, sometimes I wonder that myself. So again, there could be a Vyavaharik answer and there could be a Paramarthik answer. The essential answer, the highest answer is that I'm a spiritual being as you are. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So who are we? We're spiritual beings. We're kind of in this world, which is a transit lounge. We all came from different places. And we take on various identities, bodies, minds, psychologies. We act out roles. As Shakespeare said, all the world's a stage, and each person an actor, and everyone has their entrance and exit. So in the highest Paramarthik understanding, we're all spiritual beings. We're not man or woman. We're not Indian or English or American. We're not tall or short. We're spirit souls. But then, as spirit souls, we take on identities and roles in this world. And so in this life, the role that I took up in order to pursue my spirituality was the path of renunciation. And so I guess I sit before you today, clad in saffron robes and with a stick. Watch out. And what this signifies is someone who is treading the path of renunciation. A very, very beautiful teaching in the Vedic body of knowledge is that one can take whatever path comes most naturally to them. So some will very much live in the world, function with family, with career, and connect with divinity through that lifestyle. And others will turn away from the world to some extent, still engage with the world, but engage with the world for a different purpose in a different way. So when I was 21, I graduated from university, but I had this calling to deepen my own spirituality and to try to share it with the world in a way that's empowering, in a way that's relevant, in a way that really helps people to find well-being on every level. And so I became a monk when I was 21. When you enter monastic life, you become what we call in Sanskrit a brahmachari. And that means a student monk. And then at a certain point through one's monastic journey, if they decide to embrace lifelong renunciation, then they may accept the order of sannyas. And sannyas means, they call it the final vow. At that point, you close all the doors and you say, now I just dedicate the rest of my life to deepening and sharing spirituality. So in 2002, I was awarded the Sannyas Order of Life. When we take sannyas, then we accept a danda. So this is a danda. And it has 3 bamboo sticks within it. Bamboo is very beautiful because when any air goes through a bamboo, as you know, flutes, for example, then it sets off a very, very beautiful sound. So the first thing about the danda is it's made from bamboo and it's meant to signify that words of divinity, words of higher dimensional beauty and spiritual depth should emanate from the mouth of someone who has taken up this spiritual path. And so we carry the danda to remind ourselves that we're trying to share spirituality with people in a very beautiful and empowering way. And the 3 sticks within the danda represent the mind, the body, and the words. And so we carry it with us to almost cement and remind ourselves of the identity and the role that we've accepted.
Thank you. Swami, I'll just say one inner desire that I have. I'm trying to get serious about my spiritual life. I'm trying to get really serious.
Glad to hear it.
Really serious. But I don't really jive with this type of, wearing the orange, shaving the head, picking up the stick. It seems that do I have to do all these things to be very serious in my spiritual life? It seems like, can I contribute to society? Like, isn't it a little bit, okay, I'm not trying to insult you here, but isn't it kind of selfish to kind of like leave like society, like your job, your like having a wife, having a child, and making an actual contribution to society, and then instead of that, just sitting in a temple or like a monastery and doing my own meditation? How do you reconcile these things?
Everyone in this world has a dharma, as we talked about, a unique contribution to make in the world. And everyone makes a valuable contribution in their own way. Some people will accept a career in this world, and through their career, they'll earn a living, and then also share that success with others, with their family and with wider society, and make a contribution. Some people, as I said, will take the path of renunciation, and they still continue to contribute to the world. They contribute to the world by setting an example. They contribute to the world by sharing wisdom and knowledge. They contribute to the world by showing the world that wealth is not measured by how much you have, but how little you actually need. It's not measured by possessions or acquisitions, but it's actually measured by inner satisfaction and happiness and fulfillment. And so in this way, whatever path one accepts in this world, they can make a valuable contribution. To bring up children, to have children, and to nurture them into the future generations that will serve the world is a very beautiful thing to do. And monks, what they do, it's said that they give up one family in order to embrace the whole world as their family. And so monks will also continue to nourish people, share their heart, offer themselves in selfless service, but in a different way. When we become monks, we don't remove ourselves from society, but we do spend time in disconnection to uplift our consciousness, But then we come back into the world and we try to share a spiritual message with a world that really needs it. Einstein said you can't solve the problems of the world with the same type of thinking that created them in the first place. And so what we try to share with the world is a different paradigm, a different approach, a different perspective of how they can live life. And so, and the final thing I'd say is that our spiritual practices and our individual cultivation is not selfish, because ultimately you can't really share what you don't have. You can't take the world to a higher place than what you've reached internally yourself. And so by spending time in our own spiritual cultivation, by uplifting our consciousness, by purifying our character, we actually then emerge in the world as conscious change makers, able to actually give something of a higher quality to people.
Wow. Thank you so much for putting it like that. That makes me a little bit easy-minded now. But I was just, one question that I've always had in my mind. You know, it seems like every religion in this world has like a founder, you know, has a person, you know, like Christians have like Jesus Christ, Muslims have Muhammad or someone like that. Like, but when I try to explain my own faith, Hinduism, I feel like we don't really have like a star player, you know, like who's our Tom Brady or like you know, or Kobe Bryant, because it seems like we can all, if we all unify around one person, but I talk to every single person and they're all doing like 10 different things, you know. So who is kind of like our guy that we can go to?
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Or girl.
Sure. I think it comes back to what I talked about previously about the word Hindu. Hinduism is almost an umbrella term under which many, many different strands or schools of thought, or what we call in Sanskrit sampradayas, exist. We can say there are 4 main branches within Hinduism. You have Shaivites, who revere Lord Shiva. You have Shaktas, who revere the divine feminine. You have Vaishnavas, who revere Vishnu or Krishna. And then you have the Smartas, who have more of a perhaps impersonal understanding of the absolute. And within each one of those strands, you also have different lineages. So we do have star players, and each of those star players exist within different lineages. They're called acharyas, they're called gurus. You may have heard some of their names like Shankaracharya or Ramanujacharya or Madhvacharya or Vallabhacharya. These are all star players. They're the Kobe Bryants of Hinduism. And therefore, within whichever school and whichever sampradaya and whichever lineage one connects, they will find those inspirational personalities upon whose life and legacy the lineage continues.
Thank you for that. I was just following up on that. You seem to have a certain path or a certain lineage. You were talking about that. Now it seems like you have chosen a certain lineage or a certain practice, but it seems like, but you're talking about how different paths kind of, they get inspiration in those paths. So why choose a specific path in itself? It seems very sectarian. Isn't it just better to worship everybody? Like just worship everyone and respect everyone? Why have you, or what's the reason of choosing a specific and certain path?
Yeah. I heard you were accepted as a Princeton class of 2026, right? So it looks like you made a decision to come to Princeton. Yeah. There are many universities, I don't know how many universities in this country, and they all are academic and eminent institutions, and I'm sure you respect all of them, and you have probably friends in them, and perhaps you wanted to go to one of them, and you ended up here, or maybe you wanted to come here, I'm not sure. But you made a decision, right? So it's kind of like that. Within Hinduism, there are various schools, and each school can be respected, and each school can be honored and revered, yet one will participate within one of those schools and then accept that teaching, that emphasis, those sets of practice, and that particular yoga path which is given in order to awaken divine connection. So Princeton is not the only place you can study and get a degree. But by coming here, something resonated with you and you'll get some gift from that. And so in the same way, Hindus revere and respect and see the unity and diversity of different strands, and yet will be connected and affiliated and will give their heart to one of those schools so that they can practice it with love and devotion.
Wow. Maybe it becomes almost fanaticism when I say Princeton is the best school. I got one round of applause over there. But I was just thinking let's kind of move the conversation to like on a logical realm. In a world full of tests and chemistry and science, and if religion has gone on for thousands of years, and if you look at the Hindu literatures, it says millions of years, why is there still the question of not scientifically proving God? Do we really need religion in a world that is full of science, and we can actually prove that the scientific experiments? But religionists for thousands of years have tried to inculcate faith in people, but have invariably failed, or something has happened. So, do we need religion in a world of science?
Yeah, thank you so much. We're living in a world today where an aggressive demarcation is placed between science and spirituality. And it's almost the world in which we try to kind of juxtapose them and somehow create some kind of opposition between them. But actually, what I say is that science and spirituality just function in different domains. Science teaches us how to do things better. But spirituality teaches us to do better things. Science can work on the how and the what, but spirituality works on the why. Science is about products and processes, but spirituality is about philosophy. Science can improve things, but spirituality improves people. Science answers the questions, but spirituality questions the questions. And so, one scientist, he said, science and spirituality are opposed in the sense that my thumb and my forefinger are opposed. That opposition allows me to grasp things. And so what you'll actually find if you look at the history of science is that some of the most eminent and early scientists, they were actually grounded in spirituality and theology. One famous scientist says, all I'm doing by all my research is finding out how God did his work. And so there can be a synthesis between science and spirituality. And what we'll find is that science often corroborates what is established through spirituality. And in the same way, spirituality can give meaning and ethics and greater depth to scientific endeavors. And in that way, they can actually nourish each other instead of placing them in opposition.
Wow. I really like that point about how we can the early scientists were all religionists. That was amazing. Now, in terms of Hinduism, I've always wondered, that we have so many different types of gods, demigods, god-men, god-women, So it's why do Hindus approach divinity through so many different forms? Wouldn't an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-loving God make it simple for the little small insignificant souls to approach him? Why is it like there's so many different ways to approach him?
Yeah, Hinduism is an incredibly complex theological system, and that complexity actually makes for its beauty, and I'll explain why. Hinduism is complex for two reasons. Number one, because the absolute truth is complex. And number two, because people are complex. Let's start with this one. When people approach a religion, people have different motivations. Some people come to religion with a grossly materialistic objective. Some people come to religion with a kind of mixed objective of material and a little bit of spiritual. Some people come with a predominantly spiritual objective but still have some material desires. And some come with a very, very pure spiritual aspiration. And so what the theological system of Hinduism does is it gives different entry points. It's what we call multi-level spirituality. And so whatever one desires, whatever one seeks, whatever aspirations are deep within one's heart, what the theological system does is it gives an opportunity that for that person to begin their spiritual journey where they are. They say in teaching, the golden rule is if you want to take someone somewhere, first you have to meet them where they are. And so the idea of the multi-level spirituality is to give an entrance point to every single person who has a multifarious desires. And from there, what the theological system then does is gradually takes them to higher and higher and more pure forms of spirituality. And so there are different gods, there are different types of worship, there are different types of what we call sadhana or spiritual daily habits. And all of these things are tailor-made for people who are looking for different things, but they're all aimed at spiritual elevation towards purity.
Thank you for that. You were talking about sadhana. I'll share something about my family. Is every morning when I used to wake up in the morning on weekends or Saturdays, I used to want to sleep in, and my parents would wake me up and ring this bell, and like, oh, and it's just like it was so annoying, you know. I just wanted to like watch SpongeBob or something like that, and I'm like. And then I go in front of like the little prayer room or DD room, and I didn't really know what was going on. It's like everybody seems to be on there. I had a picture of my grandparents on there. You know, like it's so many different forms. And why do we do this kind of ceremony of making forms of divinity made of marble, made of wood, and we call them deities? Why do we do this? Isn't it kind of like primitive and superstitious? Like for example, we have a deity on the hood of my car, on the dashboard. You know, so isn't it kind of like primitive to kind of have these deities or things like that?
Yeah. See, God is everything. For God to be God, He has to be everything within your conception and everything beyond your conception. For God to be God, He has to have everything that you have and more. The moment we have something that God doesn't, or the moment we say God can't be like this, then we place a limitation. And so according to the theology of Sanatana Dharma, God is impersonal, He's an energy. God is simultaneously localized within everyone's heart, and God is simultaneously a person. All three of those identities can be and are accepted by God. And in the same way, when that personal divinity wants to descend to this world in order to enter into a transcendental exchange of love, then that supreme divinity comes in the form of material elements, wood, marble, stone, and so on. And those, although seemingly material and although seemingly just dead matter, have the ability to be spiritualized by divine infusion. And really what it requires is one to upgrade their consciousness. For example, if I have a book here, if you don't know how to read, if you don't know spelling and you don't know grammar, then when I give you that book, all you'll see it as is paper. You'll just see it in a very material way because that's how much you're able to grasp. But if you know language, if you know how to read, if you're literate, then when I give you that book, it can inspire you, it can touch you, it can change your life, it can reduce you to tears, it can make you laugh out in joy, it can energize and uplift and elevate your life. It's the same book, but because you've refined your vision and you've upgraded your consciousness, you're able to interact with it in a very different way. And so in the same way, people may say deities are just idols, they're marble, they're dead, they're kind of just, they're dolls. But when one approaches with a mood of devotion and with purified consciousness, then one can actually experience a very, very real divine reciprocation.
I was just thinking that one thing that did turn me off about Hinduism when I was growing up was this sense of all the rules and the regulations behind it. Like, couldn't we do like the bells ceremony at like 9 in the morning? Like when like I've proper like I've had my morning like wake up routine, and why does it have to be at like such an inconvenient time, like 6 or 6:30? You know, so why do we have so many rules and regulations? Isn't it, if it's all about expressing love with divinity, can we just do it from the heart whenever we need to? And when we don't want to, then, you know, just leave it. Dil se, yeah.
Yes. So this is a very good question. So what I want to share with you is that following rules, following a process, is actually one of the ways in which we awaken the deepest expression of our heart. I'll give you an example. Say you wanted to sit down in front of a piano and you wanted to express your heart, but you never took the time to learn notes. You never took the time to learn chords. Then you may sit in front of that piano, but because you never went through that regime of learning, you'd be very, very limited in your ability to express yourself. Or say, for example, I gave you a piece of paper and a pen, and you wanted to express your heart through beautiful poetry, but you never learned grammar, you never learned spelling, you never learned vocabulary. How much would you really be able to express? So the idea is that in spiritual practice, there's something called sadhana. And sadhana means a regulated practice. And to some extent, it's done out of duty. But what happens is that sadhana has the potentiality of what we call bhav. And bhav means a natural, spontaneous, emotional feeling. So the idea of the practice is that in the beginning, although they may seem ritualistic or mechanical or very regulated, what they're basically doing is awakening our spontaneity and empowering us with the ability to express our heart. And so following rules and expressing freedom are actually very much interconnected. Like I'll give you another example. If you say, I want to be free, I'm not going to stop at any traffic lights anymore. And you go and jump at red, a traffic light, then there's a very good chance, boom, you're going to get hit. And then once you're hit and your car is immobilized on the road, well, so much for your freedom. And so there's a sense in which following rules also awakens up an opportunity to discover a higher dimensional type of freedom and expression.
Convincing me here. I was a hard nut to crack, but I read a little bit of the Gita. It's a pretty interesting book, and I think you've written a few books about the Gita. If my understanding is correct, we kind of incorporate everybody's contribution. Like if you're kind of hardworking, you're known as a karma yogi. And if you're a little bit smarter, then if you go to Princeton, you're known as a jnana yogi. If you're a little bit more sentimental, then you're kind of like a more bhakti yogi, like a little emotional type. But is that kind of like the understanding that am I getting it right?
Yeah, so the word yoga, contrary to popular belief, is more than just a physical or kind of an emotional kind of exercise. Yoga is a process which connects us to divinity. And so within the Vedic tradition, there are different practices of yoga. Karma yoga is very much using one's physical and active capacity to connect that to divinity. Jnana yoga is very much about engaging one's intellect and through intellectual exercise trying to understand that absolute truth. And then bhakti yoga is very much about the heart and awakening that heart and connecting through love and devotion. These paths are in some sense independent, in another sense interrelated, because elements of every path are required within one path to make it effective. However, what Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita is that there is also a hierarchy in terms of our deepest aspiration. If I asked you, what for you, if you could choose one of these three, is most important? Option A, success. Option B, knowledge. Or option C, love.
I think I'm inclined to knowledge because I'm a class of Princeton 20 units. But maybe you learn how to do the other things also. Maybe knowledge.
My proposition to you is that if you have success and knowledge, but you don't have love, you will find your life to be very empty. And the other way around, if you do have love, genuine love, and you maybe lack on knowledge or success, you still feel like you're living the life you want to live. What the ancient scriptures actually explain is that our highest and our deepest aspiration is to love and to be loved. And therefore, all of the yoga processes, whether it be karma yoga, jnana yoga, although they all give divine connection, they're all culminating to the point where one can actually reawaken divine and true love, because that's the highest aspiration. And if you don't believe me, just go and listen to all the songs that people are singing. They're generally not singing about achieving the best job they wanted, or they're generally not singing about the great grade they got in their exam. But they're generally singing about, last Christmas, I gave you my heart. And the very next day, I threw it away. Generally, it's about love. And often, frustrated love. So the highest aspiration is love. Therefore, in a beautiful verse in the 6th chapter, Krishna says, Yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yuktatamo mataha. Krishna says there is a yukta, there is a yogi who is a yukta, connected. But this particular yogi is yuktatama. He's the most connected. He's the uttam. He's the highest of connected yogis. And who is that yogi? The yogi that has love, that has awakened love. So yes, all of these yoga practices are there. But the ultimate aspiration is bhakti.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to wrap up with 2 more questions. And I wanted to get back to the main topic, which was Dharma. And once you've found your Dharma, don't you sometimes find they conflict? Because it seems like as a Hindu American, we have many dharmas that we have, many shoes to fill. Like we have the traditional Dharma, which is what our fathers and our grandfather did. But then we have, what are we supposed to do in modern life? We're not living in 1800s Tamil Nadu anymore. We're living in Princeton, New Jersey, So we can't really, don't they conflict sometimes, Dharma? Like there's individual Dharma, then there's societal Dharma. What do you do when you have conflicting Dharmas?
Thank you so much. Yeah. So there are 2 points here. One is the variety of dharmas that you have and how to fulfill all of them. And the other question you're asking is about how to take ancient dharmic principles and live them in today's day and age. So let's deal with those separately. The first one is, yes, we do have many dharmas. Broadly speaking, we can say we have 2 dharmas. Sanatan dharma means your deep spiritual purpose, which is that you're a spiritual being and you're on your way to the transcendent realm. And that is a deep purpose you have in your life to nourish that journey. And the other dharma you have is svadharma, which means the dharma you have in this body, in this psycho-physical makeup that you've been given. And within that svadharma, we can say there are different dharmas. You may have a certain occupational dharma, a family dharma, a societal dharma, a dharma as a husband, as a wife, as a child, as a parent, an emergency dharma according to changing situations. So svadharma encompasses all of these. And then you have sanatan dharma. So how do you balance all of these? With great difficulty. I would say they're not conflicting, but they just need to be balanced. And therefore, when one looks at all of the roles that they play, Krishna recommends that many of these roles can be integrated so that when you are doing your duty as a parent, you're simultaneously contributing to your spiritual journey. Or when you're looking after your family, then you do it in such a way that it also fulfills your duties to society as well. So there is a way to integrate dharmas so that you can fulfill many things at once. And at different times in our life, we may put emphasis on different aspects of dharma as well. And so dharma can be balanced. And yes, the other point you made is that dharma has to be translated. So say, for example, I'm a sannyasi, but I don't live like a sannyasi lived 500 years ago. For one, I have an iPhone 13. Simple living, high thinking. So we take the principles. In Dharma, in Vedic culture, there are principles and then there are details. And so the principles stand true in all times, places, and circumstances. But how those principles are then applied in the current situation will vary. And therefore, there requires a certain amount of translation. And so the principle of a sannyasi is to keep traveling, to keep moving. And the way they would do it years ago is they would sleep under one tree for not more than 3 nights. And then they would move to the next tree. In 2024, is one airport every 3 days. And it's not sleeping under trees, but it's moving from maybe temple to temple. So the principle remains that a sannyasi travels, that a rolling stone gathers no moss. But how they do that, and how, so that will vary. There is a concept of how, for example, females and what their role in society is. So there are principles which are given, but how then the females will apply that in today's context may differ. And so that requires a certain translation.
Thank you so much. When I moved to college, when I moved into my dorm, there was no bells in the morning,
You really have an issue with bells.
There was the bell ceremony wasn't there. I didn't have my mom pushing me like, okay, come and see the deities or to pay obeisances or anything like that. And I had to really choose whether I want to continue this kind of path, or do I just wanted to become my own person. And I did a cost-benefit analysis, and I saw that this path in my life had more pros than cons. So now I do my own bell ceremony. But I was just thinking, do you have any advice in a world of social pressure and a lot of peer pressure, how to lead a dharmic-centered lifestyle in a modern college campus setting?
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, the first thing I would say is to echo something Einstein said, which is never stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. And I think to explore, to understand, to question, to challenge, to really get to the bottom of what we're following, and to ask ourselves, does this resonate with me? Does it make sense to me? Is it something that's relevant and useful to me? I think the moment we go on that journey of actually understanding and exploring why we're doing what we're doing, we go on a very positive trajectory. And then I think as a student, it's a great time in life. It's a time when not only is your dharma to do academically very well, but I think it's a time in your life where your dharma is to ask yourselves the big questions. What is my why? What does success look like for me 10 years from now? What values and principles do I want to live by that I'll never compromise in any situation? Where do I want to live? What kind of job do I want to do? These are questions which a student can ask now, and those are life questions. So I think university is a beautiful time. It's a time when you can academically strive, but it's time when you can also orientate life and find a conscious direction for your journey. And so I think that is the dharma of a student, to strive on both of those levels.
Thank you so much, Swami, for answering our questions. Let's give a big round of applause to the Swami.
Let's give just as big a round of applause to Hari, our representative questioner. Very practical and heartfelt and sincere and earnest questions. I know we're having a little bit of fun with the format, but the point is these questions are real. And these are real questions that many of us have had at various stages in our life, or those of us who maybe are students have now. And they're also kind of perennial, perpetual questions that appear and reappear in every season of life. So we would like to open it up. And so we passed out those note cards. Remember those note cards? Did everyone get a chance to maybe jot down some questions? Do we have some folks with questions? So we can, if you do have questions, you can just hold up the note card. If you haven't gotten a chance, you can take a minute or two to jot down. In the meantime, I want to just introduce a couple of things to us. One is that I want to invite, we're exploring the possibility of an online study group with Keshava Swami. And so this would be potentially in the spring semester. And we just wanted to hold open this possibility. So if you are interested, please do go ahead. And this QR code, I hope, is working. But that will open up a Google form that you can then fill out and express your interest. I'll leave the QR code up in just a moment. But I also want to let you know that, as I said, Swamiji is a quite a prolific author as well, and we have some books here that you're invited to purchase. And I think if Swami has some of that sannyasi energy from his travels, if he'd be willing to maybe sign copies for folks, but also if you'd like to pick up copies or order copies through Amazon. Here's a QR code also for Swami's Amazon page. So you can go ahead and access that. And I'm just going to keep both of these up. So if anyone wants to, even if you didn't get a chance to, you can do that a little bit later as well. But for now, we are going to go into kind of more of an open Q&A. And so if you've got your cards, please let me know and I'll come and collect some cards. Yeah?
Sorry, is the study group only for the students of the year?
I'd say no option.
The form is forcing kind of is asking for a Princeton email ID.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm so sorry. So the study group is, yes, a study group is designed for Princeton students. So yeah.
We got it, guys. We got it.
Cards? Yes?
Now I want to ask a question.
Oh, write it down on the card. Yes, yes, yes.
I may have to help you to read my hand. So if you need help, I will.
No, doctor, I have it. I'm assuming doctor because of your handwriting. Okay, so we can start off, but please, keep the cards coming. Maybe, Krishnani, would you mind just kind of collecting the cards maybe while we do this? So we'll start off. So in this age, do rituals matter still? And if so, what rituals? What rituals matter? What rituals are kind of outdated? And you can just speak to the role of rituals.
Rituals are very beautiful because they're almost like a vehicle through which to express our devotion. For example, sometimes the example is given of a father who may give his son some pocket money, and the son goes away to the shop, buys a present, and then offers it to the father for his birthday. And the father is overjoyed, when in one sense, he's the one that paid for the present. But the idea is that that present and that endeavor is almost like a vehicle through which one shows their love. So rituals are very beautiful when we see them like that. But what we tell people is that rituals only are valuable if there's a spirit that goes with them. We say the spirit plus the ritual makes something spiritual. And so, yes, rituals are very much important. Rituals are very beautiful. But as long as there's a spirit, as long as there's an understanding, as long as there's a certain conscious awareness and it doesn't become mechanical or simply something done out of tradition with no understanding. So,
thank you. You've used the word transcendence or transcendental. So what exactly do you mean by that word? Can you define the word transcendental?
Yeah. So to transcend means to go above. And there's a sense in which all of us have a desire to enter into a higher space. For example, they did a survey to ask people, what are the main ways in which you relax? And the top 4 answers were: number 1, go to sleep; number 2, watch a movie; number 3, go on holiday; and number 4, take intoxication. Now think about those 4 activities. What do they all have in common? Sleep, holiday, movie, intoxication. They dull the mind. They're an escape. Each one of those are an escape. Because when you go to sleep, you forget your life. When you watch a movie, you enter into someone else's life. When you go on holiday, to some extent, you leave your life behind. When you take intoxication, you become altered in your state of consciousness, which brings a certain forgetfulness. So it's very, very interesting that intuitively we have a sense to kind of transcend beyond this current being that we're in. But none of those things provide a permanent escape, because you can't sleep your whole life. You can't be on holiday your whole life. Intoxication means there's the morning after the night before. So the famous Christian writer C.S. Lewis said, if I find in myself a desire which no experience of this world can fulfill, then I must conclude I was made for another world. So when we talk about transcendence, we're talking about transcending the reality which is somehow not satisfying to us, which is somehow feeling a little alien and limiting, and entering into a sacred space.
Thank you. Before I read this next question, I know for some of us, the note cards is something new. So I just want to beg your indulgence, especially if you're a regular attendee at these programs. One of the things that we're working on is trying to sort of streamline the opportunity to ask questions. I know sometimes it's nice to ask the question yourself, but also often we have similarities in the questions that we ask. And so if you see me shuffling around cards here, it is in an effort to sort of combine and conflate similar questions and to kind of put questions in an order that might allow for sort of a natural flow. So just going to be transparent about that and ask your indulgence while we try it. Okay. So the next question, Swamiji, you said earlier that there are many different paths and that they should all be respected. So how do we go about actually supporting our fellow Hindus, if we identify as Hindus, on maybe a different path rather than seeing one another as rivals or competitors?
Yeah, the beauty is that we have the opportunity of embracing unity and diversity. Oftentimes what happens in the world is that if you look at sociology, we tend to go to one extreme or the other. We tend to try to go to a space in society where we unify everything to such an artificial extent that we don't celebrate the difference and embrace the variety. And sometimes we go to so much division and diversity that we don't learn how to work together and how to actually synergize. And so I think the real challenge, or we can put it another way, the real opportunity is for Hindus from all different groups to come together and to understand what is the common ground, what are the common principles that we all stand for. And you will find there are universal principles. And as we emphasize and work together to establish those, amazing things can be done for the world.
Thank you. We've been using words like dharma and religion sometimes interchangeably. But is there a difference between dharma and religion? And if so, what? And I'm gonna kind of do this combining questions thing. That does one need to be religious or need to be a Hindu or a member of a particular religion in order to follow dharma?
Well, the word religion comes from the Latin religare, which means to again connect. So religion in its deepest etymological sense is a process which connects us to divinity. And so whether you use the word religion, whether you use the word spirituality, whether you use the word yoga, whether you use the word dharma, all of these are processes or practices or vehicles which are meant to awaken divine connection. And so in one sense, we're just kind of playing with terms. Sometimes people prefer not to be identified with a religion because religion becomes decadent over time. It becomes very much about politics or power or position, and we somehow, in some sense, feel it begins to lose its essence. And therefore, nowadays, people say, I'm spiritual, but not religious. So I think, again, it's a definition of terms, but each one of these things are ultimately meant to awaken a genuine divine connection and spiritual experience.
To what end does one live for? For instance, in certain religions, there are conceptions of a heaven, an end goal to aspire towards. How do you understand this concept? And as a monk, as well as a practicing kind of self-identified Hindu, what would you say the sort of the ultimate objective is?
So in the Vedic teachings, there is a progression of life known as Purush Arthas, or the goals of one's journey in this world. And the way the progression is usually given is we begin with Dharma as a foundation, understanding the right way to live. Artha then comes as a natural result, which means kind of development of your economic situation. Karma then means fulfillment of one's desires in this world. And once one does that, the system tells us we come to the point of moksha, or desiring to understand what is beyond this. The Vaishnava teachers, they add a fifth one to this, and they say prema, or love, is what actually is the essence of moksha. And so if we say what is the actual essence, just as the dharma of salt is to be salty, just as the dharma of sugar is to be sweet, just as the dharma of water is to be fluid, we could say the dharma of the living being is to love, and love is specifically expressed through service. And so actually, even more than moksha, what the deepest and purest spiritualists seek is service. Service to God, service to humanity in relationship to God. And through that service, there are relationships of love. And that love is actually what we seek. And therefore, you'll find very eminent spiritual teachers saying things like, it doesn't matter whether I go to heaven, or it doesn't matter whether I go to hell. Even if I have the opportunity to render service, then I'll be happy and satisfied. And so this is a very, very profound spiritual expression, but it really speaks to what the heart of the innermost desire of the soul is, which is to love, and love is expressed through selflessness.
Thank you. So there are a couple of questions I'm pulling together that are a little bit more of a personal nature. And of course, we want to respect your privacy and your space. So don't mean to put you on the spot. And if there's something that you'd rather not speak about or that isn't so appropriate for this setting, please feel free to answer that way. But there's a question that asks about, do you ever find yourself as a monastic, do you ever find yourself being pulled too much into the world? And if so, what do you do, or how would you approach sort of realigning with your calling as a monastic?
Thank you so much. Yeah. Sometimes people see us in saffron robes, walking the world, sharing spiritual knowledge, and they almost have a sense that we're above it all. But monks are also humans. We're on a journey. We have our own weaknesses, and we are in a world, as all of us are, surrounded by influences, and that potentiality of becoming distracted is there for each one of us, monks included. And therefore, we try to live a life of integrity. We also have our struggles, and we have people that we go to who help us on our journey as well. And how do we approach that imperfection? One monk said it to me nicely. He said, if you're not perfect, you should be humble. And he said, the moment you're humble, you're perfect. And that spoke to me a lot, that in life, perhaps we don't need to strive for perfection, because we are imperfect. We have our weaknesses. We have our limitations. But in all of that imperfection, if we can become humble and then rely on a divinity which is compassionate and kind, then in that reliance and dependence, we find our perfection as instruments of that divine.
Beautiful. Thank you. Continuing the kind of trajectory of your own experiences, you spoke a little bit about family life and the kind of monastic approach to seeing the whole world as your family. But what about your relationship with your biological family, should we say?
How's my mom doing?
Essentially, reading between the lines of the card, let's say. Yeah. I might also read between the lines. How could you? Yeah. Kind of a mother's lament, maybe?
Yeah, when I was 21, I graduated. I had, opportunities to go in a certain direction in my life. And I made that decision to go in a different direction. You can imagine how shocking that was for my parents. And I always had a beautiful relationship with my parents, and they were always very kind, very encouraging. I think they gave me the principles in my life which allowed whatever spiritual progression could be made to really happen, because they really set a foundation. But then when you decide to take it to that level of becoming a monk, then it's kind of like, whoa, like this is... So it was a battle. It was an inner battle. It was a battle of emotions. And it was perhaps one of the hardest times in my life, I think. And my parents, I think they're okay with me saying this, they were opposed to it. They tried to convince me in every which way possible not to do it. And I was torn because sometimes, and we may all experience this in different ways, that there are people around you who you want to make happy, who you want to see smile and be pleased with you. And at the same time, you have an inner calling and a journey that you feel you have to take. And how do you balance that? An ancient Sanskrit aphorism tells us that if you protect your dharma, then your dharma protects you. And so, although it was difficult, I spent that time as a 21-year-old looking deep within my heart and trying to understand what's my dharma. And I understood this was my calling. And I understood, therefore, that if I followed it and did it with sincerity, then later on, they would actually be the greatest recipients of the benefit of it. And so, 25 years on, my mom's good. She's happy. Both my parents, I see them. And in some monastic traditions, there's a complete severing of one's ties with their family. In our particular tradition, although we live separate from family and we don't engage, on a day-to-day level on that way, we still have some contact with them. And so they're very happy, and they've made a sacrifice, for sure. And I hope that if there's some value in what I'm doing in my life, that I'm sure they will share in the benefits of that. So yeah, that's where I am.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good segue to jump into this sort of next collection of questions, which I'm going to try to summarize, which is essentially, in your case, perhaps after some soul searching, you felt like you were able to identify a calling. How do we figure out what our calling is, right? That's maybe the $1 million, £1 million question. How do we figure out what our dharma is, what our calling is? And I'll just add to it, kind of combining a couple of these questions. Sometimes we hear of dharma as being connected to our natural inclinations. But what if we have several natural inclinations, or they seem to be not giving us a clear picture?
Yeah. So in terms of finding dharma and understanding what is that unique contribution that we're each meant to be making, perhaps 3 words are useful in this regard. Number 1, awareness. Number 2, asking. And number 3, attempting. I'll explain what I mean. The first thing is awareness. Each of us have a unique strength, a unique weakness. Each of us have habitats within which we strive. Each one of us have things that we're naturally attracted to. Sometimes we could ask ourselves questions. What do I do that when I do it, I just lose track of time? What do I do that I would do even if no one paid me to do it? What do I do that is just so much better than everything else that I do? When we begin to kind of look into our own personality, we develop a greater awareness of the unique psychophysical nature that we are currently endowed with. And so I think finding that nature through introspection, through reflection, through personality tests, whatever it may be, just number 1, an awareness of what's your unique nature. Then I think the second thing is asking, having mentors, having guides. They say it's difficult to see the picture when you're inside the frame. So having people who can give you feedback and help you to see what you can't see in yourself, helping you to give confidence when you lack that confidence. And then the third and final thing that I'd say is that dharma is not just found out up here or through speaking, but dharma is something which we often have to just find out there on the field. And so just attempting, try different things. Don't be scared to kind of go outside of what you've been doing to see whether something else may resonate, something else may click. You may discover an aptitude or an interest that you never knew about. And so I think Dharma is something that we're constantly refining and evolving and building on over time. And oftentimes we look for that aha moment, that yes, now I found it. While there may be flashes of inspiration, it's more a journey that we go on to solidify it.
Thank you. Nice practical approach. And you like alliteration, I think, because those are 3 A's, right? So you can remember the triple A. We're going to switch gears as we just wind down here, and I really appreciate everyone's patience as far as the timing. I know we started a little bit late, but also I hope I speak for everyone in saying this is quite engaging. So I do want to try to get in as many questions as possible. This one's a little bit different, and this is, and kind of, again, combining with some of the others, as someone growing up in a Hindu-American household.
Hindu-British.
Oh, no, but the person on the card. Yeah. But as someone growing up in a Hindu-American household, I noticed that a lot of my peers are getting really serious about spiritual life. And some are even kind of making formal commitments to different paths. In my own journey, this has been making me feel as though I am not good enough or less than. How would you approach this mental block, and what advice would you give one who is feeling unmotivated because of seeing others becoming committed to their spiritual paths?
Thank you so much. Yeah, we live in a world where we are kind of programmed to compare with each other, and that can sometimes descend into competing with each other, which can then descend into complaining and criticizing. So it can be a downward spiral. I think the key is to understand that different people commit themselves in different ways. Oftentimes we may look at someone else's journey and feel them to be more committed or more progressed or more advanced on the journey. And they may simultaneously look at you and feel you have something that they don't have. Because each one of us are growing, evolving, and kind of moving in our own unique ways. I guess that's the first thing that I'd say, that there are probably things that you have that others don't have, that you may not appreciate as much as the things that you're looking for in them. The second thing that I'd say is that we're living in a world where if someone's making progress, then in some sense we're programmed to think, I'm losing. If someone's winning, I'm losing. If someone's gaining, then I'm going down. If someone's, rising, then it's meaning that I'm losing out on my chances. Whereas what we try to do in spirituality is, if someone is moving forward, if someone is successful, if someone is making commitments, then we try to share in their success, learn from their success, try to in some way absorb what is in their character that's helping them to move forward in their journey. And in that way, we're not against each other, but we're growing together. And I think when we kind of make that shift and try to approach it in that way, it's very beautiful. And I guess the third and final thing I'd say is that what really defines one's spirituality more than commitments, more than external achievements or external responsibilities or positions that they may take, what really defines it is one's sincerity and one's love. And that's something which is very difficult to measure. And so I think if we're doing our best, then that is perfection. And be satisfied with trying your best and realize that you're just on your own journey.
Thank you. And thank you to the questioners also for their honesty and vulnerability there. I wish we could do so many more, but we're going to have to probably make this one the last question of the evening. And So I'm going to combine a couple of different things to ask. Okay, so what is today? Thursday? So I go home tonight, or I go back to my dorm room, reflect a little bit on what I've heard. I wake up tomorrow morning. It's a Friday. What do I do? What do I do? If there's one thing that you, Swamiji, would like us to take forward and bring into our day and the days to come, tomorrow and beyond, what would it be?
Can I give you two things?
I'll allow it.
I think for me, I found two things have really been paradigm shifting. I think they're the two things that I did from day one that I continue to do today. They've kind of been my constant companions through my spiritual journey. And those two things are encompassed in two Sanskrit words, svadhyay and sangha. So svadhyay means spiritual study, spiritual exploration, absorbing wisdom, questioning, challenging, applying, experimenting with higher dimensional truths and see what they do in your life. So to never stop being hungry to learn spiritual wisdom. And I think the second thing is sangha. When we surround ourselves with people who are on that spiritual journey, with people who have that sincerity, with people who have experiences and realizations that we can draw from, then being in that kind of spiritual company really accelerates our journey. And so, svadhyay and sangha, and what better way to do that than with Vinny at Princeton in the Gita Life program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Keshava Swami. Let's give another big round of applause to S.B. Keshava Swami.